We have a practice in the book. Sonny Dykes has spoken with the media. TCU is healthier than they've been in a long time, and he seemed optimistic about what that could mean for this team. We'll talk about that and more next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also subscribe wherever it is you listen to podcasts. It's the perfect time to do that because fall camp started today. Well, I guess yesterday because you're listening to this on Wednesday. I'm recording it on Tuesday night, but TCU's hit the practice field. We are starting the 2024 season soon, and that means we'll have plenty of coverage right here on Locked On Horned Frogs. Appreciate you making this show your first listen. Sonny Dykes spoke with the media after practice today, and, pretty typical, like they're in shells, meaning they're just in helmets and shorts right now, not full pads yet, not a ton that you can take from what they're doing right in the moment. But I think Sonny had some good things to say, and always interested to hear his perspective as he gets ready for the football season. One thing that he mentioned right off the top was that he just felt like the approach was better. And he's been pretty forthright about this pretty much all offseason. Last year was a failure by the coaching staff in getting the team ready and he mentioned the small details, like he said even how they ate breakfast and warmed up and just approached everything with a purpose. He thinks was much better than the way they went about things last season. He's talked about giving the team too much time off last year. He had that very famous quote after the Colorado game where he discussed how he just felt like the Buffaloes were more ready to play or more excited to play than TCU was that day, which was crazy at the time, and it was honestly pretty indicative of what the season ended up looking like for the Frogs. But they got through practice one. He likes what they're bringing to the table. And I'm not going to harp on it too much longer because it's in the rearview mirror. I will say I think we can give Sonny the benefit of the doubt right now. He usually seems to have a pretty good read on his football team. However, I'll believe it when I see it. Like, I think the Stanford game will tell us a lot about where this team's mentality is, what they can do with the talent on this roster. And the coaching staff shuffled around a little bit, and so just how much that has actually improved. Because last season, it just didn't work. They weren't ready to rock and roll. They got off to a bad start. I think getting off to a bad start didn't help the team. It really hindered them in what they did throughout the season. But not being able to bounce back from that loss early in the year was really devastating, and it proved itself over the year by missing a bowl game and not getting any football beyond that. Josh Hoover looks healthy. Now, he didn't do a ton today, at least during team sessions, but he was throwing the football around. He ran with the ones. It looks like he's in good shape. I think the team as a whole, he talked about them being healthy as well, but the biggest thing for the offense and really for this team's hopes in general are a healthy Josh Hoover. I think this is a guy that you can win football games with. I don't know if he is an elite QB. I don't think he is right now, I guess I should say. Maybe he can develop into that through the years. I think we do have to allow him to grow and make mistakes and make things happen. But I feel like TCU has done a nice job this offseason of trying to build the plane around Josh Hoover. They're trying to set an environment for him where he can be successful, where he can be himself, and he can emphasize the things that he does well and play within himself. And Sonny talked about that in the press conference today. He's like, look, one of the big things for him and for all young quarterbacks is you got to figure out when to just take the completion. And it can be frustrating, whether it's in fall camp or it's during the season, if that check down is there, to just continually allow yourself to take those easy throws, to take those positive plays, because you want to take shots down the field. You want to be explosive offense. And there's a time and a place for that. But last season, whether it was the Texas game, that game against Oklahoma at times, we saw Josh could be really special. But we also saw the decision-making, the interceptions, the turnovers, those were killers. And you can't have that if you're going to be a better football team this upcoming season. That has to change, and I think he knows that, and I think the coaching staff knows that going into the season. So protecting the football, that's football 101, right? Like that's if you get the football book for dummies, you open it up to page 5, and they're talking about limiting turnovers and winning the turnover margin battle and all those things. But especially for this offense, if you're going to be a team that goes fast and doesn't really worry about time of possession or playing complementary football, then you can't also be a group that turns the ball over. Like if you're going to have the occasional quick 3 and out, there's got to be some give and take. You can't also set up your defense in bad situations where they can't make things happen because you're giving other teams prime field position during big moments in the ball game. So that has to improve, and Josh knows that. Sonny knows that. It's just something to watch. One player that he mentioned, and I talked about this guy yesterday, as just someone kind of under the radar that I've sort of lost track of throughout the offseason. When we talk about the wide receivers, is Dalen Wright. He said he thought Dalen had a really good practice. And, I mean, he's got all the physical gifts. And there's been, I think, most people that are projecting what TCU's depth chart is going to look like on the outside receiver spot. It's been Savion Williams, Eric McAllister. And I feel like that's ultimately going to be who it is, at least to start the season. But I do believe there's a place for Dalen Wright. And the more that he can push in fall camp and say, hey, these are not the only 2 guys that can play this spot. Like I can also be a force on the outside, making plays, being a deep threat, yards after the catch. So that would be a huge boost to this offense because you're going to need multiple options at that position. And inside wide receiver, I feel pretty good about. I mean, you got J.P. Richardson coming back. Major Everhart potentially, and others, but that outside receiver spot, less depth. So if Dalen Wright can step up and be a key player for them, then that's a huge thing. He also talked about how the team just seems healthier, especially when you compare it to fall camp. During fall camp, they had a lot of guys out. He said today just a handful of players in red jerseys, meaning they were going no contact for the practice completely. I do wonder, as we continue to push more towards college football being a professional sport, which I know that's not everybody's favorite thing, one thing that I kind of theorized about during spring practice was you had a lot of veterans sitting out. Like Avery Helm didn't get a ton of reps, and I know he had a procedure over the offseason, so it might just be coming back from that. And there were a bunch of other guys that were experienced players that didn't play. I have to think the coaching staff might look at these situations and say, okay, do we really need a senior, a super senior, a guy that's had 3 or 4 years of eligibility on campus playing college football? How much do we need him in spring practice on a daily basis? And that might already be happening. Maybe that's something that's always kind of gone into the thought process of college coaches. But I think especially now in the world we're living in with NIL and everything else, there might be this idea of, okay, there's always NFL veterans that don't really practice much at all. And I don't think we'll get this far with it, but there's that left tackle. Tyron Smith's a great example. He's with the Jets now, with the Cowboys for a long time, and he didn't really practice that much the last few seasons. Like he was always questionable or listed on the injury report in some form or fashion because of some injury that was hampering him. But then when the game came on and it was time to go play, he was there to play football. And I don't think it'll get that drastic in college sports, but I wonder how much they look at workload and trying to just get to a place where they're able to manage what these guys are doing and protect their bodies throughout the offseason so that when fall camp hits, they can just go full force and make it happen. He also discussed how they're further along schematically, and that's been another thing that he's mentioned multiple times this offseason is that giving the guys extra time off after the run in 2022 and also adding to the puzzle the fact that you had a new offensive coordinator, that was not a great recipe for success. And so there were a lot of things that they were kind of behind the 8 ball on with install that they just couldn't simply catch up on. And so I guess in similar fashion here, they're in a better spot, one, because there's some continuity with this coaching staff, not on defense, but on offense. And so they feel like at the moment they're much further along than they were last season we talk about understanding Kendall Brow's offense. And I think if there's one thing that gives you optimism about the offense this upcoming year, it is that a lot of these guys should know the scheme, the verbiage, the terminology really well, and they shouldn't have to think nearly as much about what they're doing. They should just be able to get out there and go play, and that could be a big boost for this TCU football team. And finally, he talked about the offensive line, and he said the good news is you got a lot of experience. So they brought in a lot of players that have played, lots of snaps in the college ball level. The bad news is a lot of these guys don't have experience with one another. So you are breaking in pretty much a brand new offensive line. And so communication, understanding responsibilities, getting all that streamlined, it's going to be a process. There's probably going to be some growing pains. But the challenge over this next month is they got to find the right 5 guys, and they've got to get them up to speed as quickly as possible. I think this is also a big year for A.J. Ricker because last season it just wasn't pretty. And I know personnel had a big part in that, but they're scouting these O-linemen in the portal and bringing them in, so they need to hit on a few of them. And also, at some point, you want to develop and grow the guys that you're bringing in through the high school ranks, and they've done a great job of prioritizing that over the last few recruiting cycles by getting multiple names in there and hoping that some of those players can hit. But it's just, I think it's a huge year for, okay, let's make sure we can do this at a high level block and have an offense that is functioning well and being efficient this upcoming season. So that's going to be a huge key for this team. And one of the many challenges is they try to find some more consistency in 2024. When we come back, I talked about a potential coaching upgrade or an addition to the coaching staff yesterday. That's official. And apparently it's not just one, but it's 2 former head coaches that are now joining the staff as analysts. We'll talk about that next here on Lockdown Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. Gametime. If you need tickets, Gametime is the place to go. If you're looking to get tickets to a Rangers game, maybe an Astros game, check out the Gametime app. You can use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll get that up for you shortly so you can make sure you get it right. But download the Gametime app. It's super easy to navigate, and it's a great app to use. And one thing that I love about it, I've said this before, but they just make things really simple. They tell you exactly where you're going to sit. You get a great view of what your seat's going to look like and what the field, the view of the field or the stage or whatever event you're going to. But also, there's no hidden fees. They're very upfront with you. They're like, here it is. You're paying this much. There's some fees involved, but they tell you what they are, and they don't make you guess. So that's a huge thing. Download the Gametime app today. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions, as always, do apply, but download that Gametime app and use that promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. A new sponsor that's on with us, and we're happy they're here. If you're looking for, one of the big challenges for my wife and I, as we have 4 kids running around all the time from the ages of 8 to 2 or 8 to 18 months, is dinner time's chaotic. Like making them food and entertaining them from the hours of like 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's the most stressful part of the day in my mind. And you get dinner done for them, and then you're like, okay, what are we going to eat whenever we get a chance to sit down and hopefully eat with one another? Here's a great plan if you're in that situation. Factor meals. Warmer, sunnier days are calling. Fuel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals in time for summer thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you always have time to enjoy nutritious, great tasting meals. Over 35 different meals with more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week. Crush your wellness goal this May with a dietitian approved ingredients that you can trust. Head to factormeals.com/lockedoncollege. Again, that's factormeals.com/lockedoncollege to take advantage of this deal. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege50 to get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month. That's code LOCKEDONCollege50 at factormeals.com/LOCKEDONCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is alive. Factor Meals, thanks for being a part of the Locked On Network. So yesterday I talked about an interesting thing that was potentially happening with the TCU coaching staff, adding Dana Holgorsen to the mix. Dana, longtime coach at West Virginia, and then spent a few years at Houston. So that's apparently happening, according to Sonny Dykes. And then he also mentioned another name, Todd Graham. Todd Graham, who's been at Arizona State, also a former head coach at Hawaii. And Sonny said they're both talented people that I've known for more than 20 years. Both have been very successful and have a unique perspective. They can help us win. Graham went 106-72 as a head coach at Rice, Tulsa, Pitt, Arizona State, and Hawaii. He did resign in Hawaii in 2021, and it wasn't a big great circumstances. Basically, the players were like, hey, we don't like this guy. We don't like how he treats us. We don't like his style of coaching. We're not going to play for him anymore. And so he moved on. But Todd has been a friend of Sonny's for a long time. And I remember a few years ago, I think it might have been Dave Wilson. Dave Wilson wrote the story today from ESPN. He might have been the one that wrote this story I'm referencing as well. But he talked about Sonny Dykes being a part of that air raid tree that Todd Graham's a part of. Also, Dana Holgorsen. Todd Graham, most of his experience was on the defense side of the ball. But Todd has been just someone who's kind of the sounding board for him through the years, and he's brought him in at times at his different programs, whether it's SMU or TCU. And just said, hey, could you observe practice? Could you see what we're doing? And could you give me a good idea about, is this right? Is it wrong? Are we on the right track? And Todd's been very honest with him. And back in 2022, before the season, he was like, hey, I think this team could win the Big 12. And Sonny was sort of like, what? And he was like, no, I really think just watching you guys, I feel like you have the talent, you have the physical gifts, the tools to be really good. And that was, of course, before anybody had any expectation for what TCU could be. And, well, I guess technically it didn't turn out to be right, but they did even bigger things by winning the playoff game and going 12-0 during the Big 12 regular season, making it to the Big 12. And so all that was super encouraging. And he was one of the first people that sort of saw the vision of what they were doing. I love this on a lot of different fronts, but the main thing is it's just more experience in that room that gives you the ability to make things happen. And I do wonder if this allows Sonny to focus on some different things. Like, I know the world of head coaching now is just so much different, and there's so much responsibility. These guys have a ton on their plate, and possibly having Holgorsen and Graham on the staff, former head coaches, he can offload some things to them, and it allows him to sort of be that CEO that he wants to be. As far as what their roles are going to be, Holgersen's going to do some advanced scouting for them, and he's going to focus on defenses on the schedule that they're going to play. And basically he's going to be like, hey, this is how I think we can attack them. And Graham's also going to do some scouting for them, but it's going to be with a unique perspective. As a defensive guy, he's going to kind of evaluate TCU's offense and say, all right, here's what you're doing. Here's what you need to do better when you attack defenses, and you can't, like, these are the weaknesses on the offense that defenses are going to attack. So very specific things. And I said, like, this is what big programs do. You know, Nick Saban had a huge coaching staff for years, and others have done similar things. Kirby Smart at Georgia has a ton of analysts on his coaching staff. It's just a way to kind of load up and keep things fresh and understand what you're doing. So I love the thought process. I like that you're just bringing on smart folks. And, there will be some, I guess, complaints about, well, these guys weren't super successful head coaches. But you're not asking them to be head coaches. You're asking them to do specific things that they can excel at because of their experience and because of their background in coaching. So I think this is a great fit, and it should be something that TCU fans are excited about. Todd Graham and Dana Holgorsen both joining the coaching staff for this upcoming season as analysts. When we come back, we'll talk about a new commit for the 2025 class And some of your thoughts from yesterday's show. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. eBay Motors, if you are worried about your vehicle, worried about finding the right part for your vehicle, don't keep worrying about it. Don't let that stress you out. Go to eBay Motors today. They have the eBay Guaranteed Fit program. How it works, you put the make and model of your vehicle in their system. You pick the part that you think that you need, and they will tell you immediately, yes or no, this is it. eBay Motors, millions of parts for your MVP. You cannot play around with your car. You can't mess around with your ride. You have to get the right parts that fit your vehicle. eBay Motors, millions of parts for your MVP. Win every time with parts that fit your ride. eBay Motors, they make it easy for you with the eBay Guaranteed Fit program. Give them a try today. Go to ebaymotors.com. Use that and make sure you get the right part, and don't stress about it anymore. eBay Motors, proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. So one 2025 recruiting note, the Frogs added a player who kind of under the radar, Blake Robinette. He's an All Saints high school player, private school there in Fort Worth. Defensive lineman, interior defensive lineman, 6'3", 265 pounds. So good frame. He's not currently ranked, and he actually was currently committed to UNLV. Didn't have a Power 4 offer that I could see before TCU got involved here. I think this is just scouting on TCU's part. This is a guy that they think has a chance to be really good, and they're saying, you know what, we trust our evaluation here, and we're going to go with it. And I think at the back end of a recruiting class, when you've got so many names already in place at different positions, this is the type of chance that you can take. And you can say, hey, this is a guy that's more of a developmental project. That's okay. You know, TCU's got a number of blue chip players that should be ready to contribute right away. And maybe this is a guy that you spend some time putting weight on, but it could pay off later on. Watching his tape just briefly, I mean, he moves really well. He's got great quickness and a lot of the traits that you want to see from an interior defensive lineman. And at the moment, he's not like topping out 300 pounds, but I think there's room on his frame to kind of grow and develop. And then also another part of this is in this new defense, you don't necessarily have to have that Dominic Williams type that you've had in the past. That's just a true nose guard that can function well in a 3-down lineman system where they're taking up a lot of space. So Blake Robinette, All Saints defensive lineman. TCU decided, you know what, we scouted this guy, we like him, and we're going to move forward with him. He's added to the 2025 class. Of course, the big news in this class is Adam Schobel, quarterback at Columbus High School and who was committed to Oklahoma State. He flipped to TCU. So, you know, his uncle Aaron was a longtime player. His dad Matt was a longtime player. His cousin John is going to be part of the 2025 class as well. His dad and uncle went on to play in the NFL and have successful careers after the time at TCU. So it made sense that he would make this move. And again, I think coaching staff did a really great job getting him on board after losing Ty Hawkins. And so that was a great job by Sonny and company, making sure they got that done and making sure they had a guy who was going to be a big part of this class moving forward and continuing to build it, even though they've got it mostly squared away, the guys they want to get. And then one more kind of random housekeeping note here. I saw Jamie Plunkett report yesterday that TCU is going to play TCU men's basketball. They're going to play Arkansas in an exhibition game. John Calipari made the move from Kentucky to Arkansas this offseason. So Frog's going to play the Hogs at Dickies Arena on November 1st. We constantly go at Jamie about not having a strong non-conference schedule. And I guess technically this is a game that doesn't count, but hey, it is good competition. And a lot of those scrimmages are kind of closed door scrimmages. So it'll be cool to see them in action and kind of where they're at, because that's a super talented Arkansas squad that they'll be playing. We'll be back tomorrow. More news about fall camp and everything else going on in TCU athletics. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.